very special guest, Dr. Umar Johnson, has been away traveling so very much. But we are so happy to have him back here in the studio on the air with us today. I want to say good evening, Dr. Umar Johnson. How are you?
Peace and Pan-Africanism. Bobby Davis, glad to be back on the show. Shout out to the entire city of Philadelphia, and I want to send a heartfelt condolence as well as sympathies and energies of support to our brother Gillie the Kid, Philadelphia rapper, as well as podcaster who lost his son to street violence a few nights ago. So we want to send our hearts out to him, Wallow, the $1 Million Worth of Game podcast family, and the entire community.
That's amazing. I saw your post on that the other day. I think it was on Facebook. And I didn't know that it was Gillie the Kid. What happened to him?
His son. It wasn't him. It was his son.
Okay.
Allegedly, and I don't know the specifics, but allegedly he was hanging out in the Alney section of Philadelphia Thursday evening, I believe it was, when a car drove by and began shooting at him and two of his associates. And he ended up getting shot in the back, and it took his life. The other two were fortunate enough to make it to the hospital, and I believe they're in stable condition, if not having already been released. But unfortunately, Gillie's son, who is also an up-and-coming rapper by the name of YNG Cheese, 25 years old, was shot in the back to come to the womb.
Wow, that's so sad. And they were talking about violence, and they were saying, and it was interesting because they were just talking on Brother Shamari's show, and they have some young people called Word Warriors, and they were talking about attributing some of the violence to rap music. And then they were saying, well, if it's rap music, a lot of white people, and like white teenagers, listen to rap music too. How come they're not as violent in their communities? What do you say to that?
Number one, they know better. That's number one. They have accountability in their community. We have none. In fact, we are the only community in the United States that does not have any system whatsoever of internal accountability. Mm-hmm. Black people are not held accountable for what they do to other black people. So we basically operate on a system of anarchy. The black community is under the rule of anarchy. It is everyone for themselves, everyone by themselves, and we're not even beginning to think about coming together to create a system of law and order. We are not anarchists. That is not African culture. That is not our history. White people come from a history of anarchy because their trauma in the ice gave birth to a lawless society. Mm-hmm. That is not us. We have always
the survival of the fittest. That's what it was.
Law and order of the solar system, the law and order of humanity. So that's not the way we should be operating, but we have to understand that our children are a visual printout of who we have become as adults. So the children are just the rawest, unbridled form of the dysfunction that exists amongst the adults in the community itself. And this does not get better. It only goes downhill. Problems unaddressed get worse. You can't show any type of problem that gets better being ignored and being unaddressed. And that goes for us as it goes for anyone else. That is nature. So if we don't address the black on black crime, if we don't address the miseducation, the fatherlessness, and when I say fatherlessness, I'm not speaking necessarily of individual fathers. I'm speaking of us collectively as black men providing fatherhood for children whose fathers may be deceased, incarcerated, or nowhere to be found. Black men, and I'm going to put this on our shoulders because we're dealing with the boys. If we were dealing with a female issue, I would put that on the shoulders of the women. But the boys, from an African traditionalist perspective, have always been a responsibility of the men. And we as men have failed our boys, and in failing our boys, we are also failing our women and our community.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that you say we refuse to accept accountability. And I remember Iyanla Vanzant said that a person that is not accountable to anyone is a danger to themselves.
Well, and they're a danger to everyone else as well.
And everybody else around them. That is so true.
You know, which basically, Baba David, it makes all of us a community of hypocrites, because in essence, what's going on is you have black people who are complaining about things being done to us by white people. You have black people petitioning for reparations and other types of issues. But if we are really angry about the fact that the U.S. government hasn't responded to our petition for reparations, if we are really angry about how the Democratic Party has taken advantage of us, not only over the past 4 years, but I would say over the past 50 years, if we're really angry about the fact that Governor DeSantis and other governors across America have made it illegal to teach the history of slavery, to teach racism, and now putting a very disingenuous spin on the role of slavery in American history, treating it as if it was something benevolent for African people, claiming that we actually benefited from slavery. That is insane.
It is.
The question we have to ask ourselves, as a result of that information, as a result of hearing that you have states that are passing legislation making it illegal to teach the truth about slavery, or in the case of Florida, you have states who are revising their social studies curriculum to project slavery as having been a benevolent and worthwhile institution for African people. I'm willing to bet you not a single meeting was held to do anything about it.
Wow.
And I'm willing to bet you that not a single meeting was held to build a school so our children could be taught.
Wow.
Or if not even a school, build a program so black children could be taught who they are. I'm willing to bet you that there was no systemic, productive response to the fact that they're going to be teaching that slavery was a good thing for African people. We don't respond. We react. Okay? When the police kill us, we react. When other black people get on our nerves, we react. When the government does something against our better interests, we react. Black people don't respond because we don't want any responsibility. So we only react. We have a temporary temper tantrum, and we go right back to the status quo, business as usual.
Okay, let me see. We got a caller in. If anybody else want to join the conversation, you can do so by dialing 215-634-8065. Good evening, caller. What's your first name? Where you calling from?
This is Rick calling you long distance from Germany.
Hey, Rick. How you doing today?
Struggling to breathe and.
That's right. We have Dr. Umar Johnson on the phone line with us as our guest.
Okay. Dr. Umar, I grew up in Washington, D.C. in the early to late 70s in the D.C. public school system, and then two private schools, two sister private schools. But I discovered early on in elementary school that there were black church folk, black military folk, black police folk, black Secret Service folk who did not want the teaching of genocide, Native American history, medical evils history to grade schoolers at the junior high and high school level. What do you say to this?
Well, I would say that our church people, hypocritically and ironically and paradoxically, are some of the most docile people in the black community. You know, church people are interestingly docile in the face of evil and oppression, which is a total contradiction to the behavior and the legacy of one Jesus the Christ. Very docile. Our Muslim brothers and sisters are also very docile in the face of evil and oppression, which is a direct contradiction of the life and works of one Muhammad ibn Abdullah. So church people are not going to be the vanguard of this. They were during slavery, but that was a different kind of a church. They were during civil rights, but that was a different kind of a church. And let us keep in mind that the good reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had to fight the black church. He not only had to fight members of his own church, he had to fight the black clergy itself.
Even here in Philadelphia.
Who felt the church had no business getting involved in civil rights. So we have to be very honest. The post-antebellum black church has been a rather cowardly, parasitic organization in the black community. You can't show me one good thing that the black church has done systemically to improve the lives of black people. With all these mega churches and all these big name pastors in every city, you can't point to anything relevant and significant that they have done in the past 50 years. With that being said, I'm going to go back to what I always say. We got to build our own school. See, the fact that they're going to start teaching that slavery benefited black people because it taught us some skills, first of all, that's a flat-out lie. One of the reasons why they chose African people, in addition to our genetic superiority, being able to withstand the climates and the diseases of North America that neither the white man nor the red man could, was the fact that we were already expert in the planting and growing of the crops that they would use us for. Cotton is not foreign to African people. We were making cotton clothing for millennia before the white man got there. So we knew about planting cotton and growing cotton. And if you read the narratives of the slavers, those who went to Africa and those who purchased Africans, they often picked our ancestors based on their ability to be able to plant and to grow. We introduced vegetables and fruits and herbs into America from Africa. So they didn't teach us. They brought us because we already knew, and in many cases, we taught them. I mean, the cotton gin itself was an invention of an enslaved African. So the fact that they are going to flat out lie on the history, despite all the evidence to the contrary, speaks to the racism of America, speaks to the fact that the white man has never changed his clothes, but it also speaks to the weakness of the black community. It speaks to the fact that they know that they can do this because they're going to get absolutely no pushback from the black community. They wouldn't dare try this with any other group, but they will do it with us because, as Frederick Douglass said, he who is whipped the easiest will be whipped the most.
Wow. That's interesting. And they do it, and we let them do it so easily.
So easily.
So easily. we got another
Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, you know, she put on her black face for a minute and made a statement against it. But there's nothing systemically being done by the White House against this. There's nothing being systemically done by the Democratic Party. There's nothing being systemically done by the Congressional Black Caucus. You know, there's no attack or no pushback by any of these mainstream civil rights or political special interest groups. They're going to let it happen because, as I've said before, Baba David, the Democratic Party is in cahoots with the Republican Party as it relates to the genocide of African people. And what the Democratic Party does is they don't stop the Republican Party from doing anything against black people. They let them do it, and then they come out with a fake propaganda campaign in the media to make it look like they didn't support it. They are in full lock and step with the Republicans as it relates to spoiling in dismissing the true history of African people in this country.
Yeah, because why can't they talk about withholding funds to that?
Absolutely.
State. That's why we won't withhold your monies for that state because you're not in compliance.
Absolutely. If the state of Florida or any other state wants to make it illegal to teach slavery, wants to make it illegal to teach racism, and want to misrepresent what slavery was to African people, the greatest Holocaust in human history, then you will get no funding.
Yep.
No federal funding will go to states that are electing to discriminate against black children in instruction.
That's right.
That would solve it right there, Mama Baby. That would end it. Biden is not going to do that. Why? Because he wants to appease liberal Republicans and conservative Democrats. They don't want to rock the boat ahead of next year's election, and the Republicans know it. The Republicans know it. America has become more anti-black than it's ever been since the civil rights struggle. And as you know, politicians are not leaders, they are appeasers. Let me say that again. Politicians are not leaders, they are appeasers. And so they look at what people are doing, they look at how people are feeling, and they say, how can we appease this shift in focus away from treating black people fairly, which never was the case, to this new resurrection of blatant and bold white racism that doesn't want to concede on anything regarding black people. The Democrats aren't going to rock the boat because they don't want to lose conservative Democrats and they don't want to lose liberal Republicans ahead of next year's election. I swear, Baba, one question, I wish I could take a poll of all 50 million Africans in America, and no, I don't discriminate between whether that African came on a plane or whether that African came on a ship or whether that African came on a boat before Columbus. It's all the same to me, one family. But I wish I could take a poll of all Africans in America and find out who's voting next November and what exactly are you voting for if you are voting.